Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. Eclectic album reviews and general musical meanderings. This week I'm going to be taking a look at an album by a band called Sault. That album being Untitled, Rise. Sault got quite a bit of press in 2020. For one thing, making two incredibly great albums over the course of the year. Untitled Black Is, and then later on in the year, Untitled Rise, which is this album. But also for kind of ended up being a spokesperson for the racial tensions that were going on in the U.S. at the time. And a lot of that critical acclaim was well-deserved and also very fortunate because Sault is a band that kind of indulges in some anonymity. They don't have any press releases. They don't do interviews. Their websites and all their stuff is very kind of opaque and doesn't say very much about them. If you do some digging, you can find that Sault is sort of centered on two main people, Dean Josiah Info Cover and Cleopatra Cleosol Nikolic. These two musicians, I think, form the core of Sault, although there is a sort of a roster of musicians I believe that they use to kind of fill out what they're doing. I often hear Sault referred to as a collective, but the collective, I think, revolves around those two main musicians. And this anonymity has already made it difficult for me to get into them because I'm a guy that really likes to know context, like to know what the people are coming from, their background, nothing as far as Sault goes, which made it difficult to review them last year when I got into Untitled Black Is, around whenever it was released on Juneteenth. And by the time I kind of got my mind wrapped around that album, they have released a whole second full album before the end of the year. So I started off the album this year with Untitled Rise, and it's been a very prominent presence throughout my listening throughout the course of the year. It's been very gratifying and in some ways an eye-opening listen. It actually impresses me that they've been able to be so prolific while still keeping such a high standard of their music. I think a lot of that has to do with them choosing to kind of be anonymous and not engaging a whole lot in pursuing the pushing their own albums or their own media presence. Allows them to really focus their energy on their music, which is what matters. Now, Sault's style, the style of music they're doing is this very interesting, I hate to say even blend, like it's a cross-section of a wide variety of black music. Soul, R&B, funk. Those are the big three that you hear a lot. But then you have an added thing of like Afrobeat, a very strong presence of like African influences on the album. And on this particular album, quite a bit of like 70s disco dance hall sounds, The previous album indulged a lot more like current dance floor, techno, EDM styles. But this one really has very prominent use of very lush string arrangements that really recall that classic disco production that was going on in the mid to late 70s. Adept as Sault is at blending these styles together and really looking at a wide variety of different kinds of music. Even within their songs, there's a lot of kind of adventurous experimentation going on. It's very kind of not too obvious. There's not a really strict verse, chorus, verse format that goes on overall in these songs, like you would hear in like a more standard R&B or funk format. Instead, it's more like almost like a theme and variations. Like they'll have something that shows up at the beginning, but then it goes through these kind of different permutations. And that opening track has a section where they almost break into this full-on Brazilian batucada style. But it's never just indulgent. It never seems to be doing these things just to do them. But they have served to heighten the energy and heighten the emotion of the pieces as they're going along. And in addition to this excursion and maybe more different parts of the African diaspora, really have to point out the clear reference they have on this album to Afrobeat and Fela Kuti. There's a couple songs on here that really like clearly pays tribute and pays homage to his work.
Our strength through millennia, bathed in the tears of 1,000 ancestors, we shall rise. As it was in the beginning, so too shall it be in the end.
They don't know about war, they don't know about war. They don't really want us to go to war.
And along with this various musical styles, there's also many excursions into spoken word passages. There are vignettes in some spots, they're incorporated into songs in other ways, but many of these are the most direct statements of what Sault's sort of mission statement is. As musically seductive as Sault is, lyrically they're very unflinching. And that's what keeps Untitled Rise from being just an album that is adventurous in terms of its stylistic breadth. But its message looks directly at the listener and cites black injustice, but always with a spirit of resistance and pride and faith. That things will be better or that they can be better. And lyrically, Untitled Rise is very ingenious, but it's not ingenious in terms of its wordplay. It is instead ingenious in terms of its directness and its honesty in the way that it deals with this stuff. A great example is the song I Just Want to Dance. Like superficially, that just sounds like a great groovy dance track. But really the song is about a person engaging in dance as catharsis and therapy for like the specter of violence and the stress of injustices that the average black person deals with on a day-to-day basis. Not escape from it, but an opportunity to travel through that trauma through dance.
Dance, 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 makes me feel alive, feel alive. I can't count the man, mad, we lost another life, life.
I saw a meme not too long ago that put out the idea that white culture in general, one of the most infuriating things about white culture is that white culture is very against like real talk. We will do almost anything we can to keep up pretenses that everything is fine. And there's some truth to that. And it's not just across racial lines, but it's just interpersonally too, usually at the cost of really getting at issues. And this is one of the things that Sault is really great at because they talk very directly about issues. A lot of real talk on this album. And many of these are also in the spoken word passages. Another great example is the spoken word piece, You Know You Ain't, which is kind of this almost comedic, but very biting commentary about a black individual who's being told things that they see are enable racial inequality, and calling them out.
Yeah, I see your little post talking about BLM is my motto, but you know it ain't. I see you over by the water cooler on your break, talking about Tanisha, your mental health is super important to me, but you know it ain't. You assume and surmise that educating you is somehow my responsibility, but you know it ain't.
And later on in the album, there are some spaces where the tone of the music becomes a little bit more despondent and barren. There's a really great instrumental track on there that really borders on like almost straight free jazz, but the message never wavers. I mean, all the way down to the very last track, Little Boy, where it's a song that's just telling a young person that someday when you're older, I'll tell you the truth about the police and what happens to people on a day-to-day basis when they have the color of the skin that you have. Again, these are the sort of topics that sometimes make us as white people feel uncomfortable, but are also very empowering to black people who see them every day, all the time, on a regular basis. And as such, I think that Untitled Rise is a great example of that. It's a great statement about how you can see injustice and resist against it, but still have dignity in light of that. And I think it's also particularly interesting because Sault is a London-based group. They're not an American group, but they still have a lot of the same issues. You know, Britain had its part in creating an African diaspora. And although America does get name-checked a couple times in the album, don't get me wrong, you know, our problems are very globally visible. But they're things that I think that Black culture across national boundaries all deal with. And as a call for solidarity, I think that Untitled Rise is a real success and a great musical listen as well. Very important album, I think, and one that I think really holds up under very close listening. But that's all I have to say about it for now. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, share it out with your friends. Also follow me over on Spotify. I'll put another Sault track up on there for the 2021 playlist. And until then, I'll catch you on the flip side.